That's a great idea, and we've discussed this before. I would love to start one in, you know, we could take 4 counties in this group and 4 counties in this area and 4 counties over in the Panhandle, and I would love to do that. But it takes money and it takes time, and we were lucky to get the grant through the U.S. Department of Ed. The number one thing I would say is just research grants. Try to find one that you can get. So because it's just going to take somebody that can um, go out, um, dedicate their time to helping other people, getting I'll be honest with you, the trainings are there. I mean, and I'll help anybody that wants to do it, but the trainings are there. The statewide groups, Oklahoma Developmental Disabilities Council has a program called Partners in Policy Making for anybody that's interested, and that's where I got my biggest. It's free, uh, but it is basically an advocacy training program. It's for parents, it's for people with disabilities, it's for anybody that is interested in helping people with disabilities. And so, you just go to the DD Council's website. You can look at partners in policymaking. That's one of the best things that ever happened to me, and that's how, honestly, in partners in policymaking, that's how I came up with the idea of the Pervasive Parenting Center. I wanted to do a resource center, and that was one of my projects in there, was to come up with a 5-year plan. And I said, in 5 years, when I'm done, I want to have this. And so, um, just networking, get to know people. Everything I have, the grant I learned about because of somebody I knew. Um, the partners in policymaking is because of somebody I knew. Talk to people that are doing what you want to do. Talk to people that um, know the issues. Talk to anybody that'll listen. That's a good question. I know that's been one of the biggest issues, and I kind of hit on that a little bit. FERPA is a big deal, and for good reason. And now I say that we've never hidden that Connor has a disability. We wanted people to know because they can't help him, they can't understand him if they don't know. That doesn't mean that it's wrong not to do that. I understand parents and why they wouldn't want to do that, and why they want they don't want, especially if you're talking about a learning disability. We're talking about a developmental disability that's hard to hide. Um, but one of the things I would just say is this: you don't have to point out people with disabilities to understand people with disabilities. You can understand their issues, and you can probably see their issues if you look hard enough. Um, but if you understand that, okay, a kid that's struggling with reading out loud, instead of making fun of him, we can either help him or at least tell him that we understand, and so we don't have to point out the person with a disability. That also means that we don't, what I mean by that is we don't necessarily have to interact. And this is what I had a hard time with when we first started this, because I really did want them to interact a lot with people with disabilities. But then I understood that the school said, look, we can't point out people with disabilities and say, hey, this is it. So I said, look, if you want to intermingle them, and we won't tell anybody that they have a disability, then that's okay. And if you don't want a person, Panama School, we don't necessarily put people with disabilities into the peer mentoring program. It's usually for the mentors. But with Moffat, they try to put people in that they think would benefit, that would have a disability, so that they can also interact with. So it's kind of a, I wouldn't even say half and half, but there's a couple of kids in that program. Of the 13, there's probably 3 that have a disability. So you can get around the FERPA thing, but you have to be really careful with that. The bad part obviously is the interaction. We still do our screenings, we do trainings in person, but we do them by appointment only. We have no walk-ins anymore, at least until we decide that the numbers aren't going up still. And so we'll do appointment, but we also wear masks and we do the temperature checks and we do everything, by the book now. But if we can avoid that, then what we've been doing is trainings through Zoom. I'll still set up just like we did today, and I'll go through our training, and they can still interact with me, and they can still ask questions like you guys are doing now. And so that's we've moved to a lot of that. Now, when you go into the peer mentoring, that's a little bit harder because you got to get a whole class to, in on a Zoom meeting. And so we'd really prefer to do one on one. But it seems like every time we decide that we've got a date that we can go into a school, the school either goes to virtual or they have shut out people from the outside because of a threat of quarantine or something like that. So I'm not gonna lie, this year's been hard. So but the positive, so those are some of the negatives. The positive side, though, is that we've gotten a lot more participation. We have to do an IEP training every year for parents, and where we would normally get about 30 in person, this year we did one virtually to start the year, and we had 88, I think, on our call. So, we almost tripled our numbers just by doing it online. And I think people can sit there and do that at home. They don't have to worry about where their kids are, and there's a lot more comfort to that. And they can ask questions through the chat. They don't have to ask it out loud if they don't want to. And so there have really been some positives. So I don't want to say that it's been all bad. There's really been some good stuff. That's pretty hard. I Again, the U.S. Department of Ed helps me with that because we get emails constantly, and almost to the point where I'm bombarded with them to that I kind of forget sometimes to post those and to share those. But the Department of Ed has really helped me with that. And Facebook. If I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see something, I think and my families need to know this. I'm always thinking family oriented. Now, with that, let me back up a little bit. I help educators a lot because if I can help the educators, then I'm helping the families too. So it's a win-win. But my brain's always thinking, what will families want to know? How will this benefit a family? And so if am scrolling through and I see something, I'm going to share it. So that's kind of been the hard way. I mean the way, but it is hard. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, and what's good, what's bad. I have to weed through a lot of that too. So 11 years ago, my mother-in-law was reading through a newspaper, I think out of Tulsa, and she saw where somebody was doing a Santa Claus for people with sensory issues. I can't remember where it was out, but it was based somewhere around Tulsa area. And she shared that with us and said that's a really good idea because Connor has sensory processing disorder as well, and there's a lot of issues going on there. We didn't start that. Um, we had at the time we were meeting with a parent support group, just this group of families, and a mom said, "Look, we're going to do sensitive Santa." And we had kind of brought it to her, and she said, "We're going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to run with it." And so she set up to have a sensory friendly Santa. And what that means is Santa is not your typical Santa who's loud and boisterous and whatever. He's real soft spoken, quiet. The kids can go in and they can hang out until they are comfortable going up to Santa. They don't have to wait in a line like they would with the mall Santas or anything. The lighting we try to keep low because lighting can be an effect. We try to keep the distractions at a minimum. So not a lot of loudness. We do them by appointment because if we can do one or two in instead of 50 at one time, it's going to keep the distractions down. And So sensitive Santa's been something we've done for 11 years now. We took over um, after year 2 or 3, I can't remember, but we've been doing it ever since. And it's my favorite thing to do. I'm telling you that all year, it's definitely one of my favorite things to do, if not the favorite. We've had so much growth in some of the students, or not students, but some of the kids. Um, we had one for 5 years that he would come in, and he never Santa would have to kind of sneak behind him just to get a picture with him. And after about 4 or 5 years, he finally warmed up to him, and in year, I think it was 5, he finally got in and got right up on Santa's lap, and everybody was crying. There were tears everywhere. It was crazy, but it's for those kids that don't feel comfortable going into big places and that will have a meltdown in public. And we open that to all disabilities too, because we know that that's not easy for, we've had kids with Down syndrome, we've had kids with cerebral palsy. This year, obviously, we had to change some things. It was by appointment, one in, one out, so we couldn't hang out. We couldn't do. Usually, we have an area where we set up toys, and we set up a place to read or color, and a place to watch movies, and cookies and milk, and so they can hang out and do things while they're waiting on Santa or while they're warming up to Santa. This year we couldn't do that. It was just in, you see Santa, and then once you're done, we'll clean up, and then the next person can come in, and so we sanitized. But we had two kids who had cystic fibrosis, and so mom said, "Look, we don't feel comfortable going in public, but we've been doing this for years. We would love to see Santa." And so Santa set up where he went to the curbside, and we met them in their vehicle, and he listened to them through the car window. And um, that worked out so much better for them. Our Santa is amazing. He'll do whatever it takes to get the kid comfortable and to do whatever they need to see Santa that year. And we had a couple. In fact, this year we had a couple that of our regulars, probably about 4 or 5 of our regulars, that just didn't feel comfortable coming out at all. So he made a special video just for them, and we sent them to the mom, and they were just, "Hey, Grayson, good to see. I'm sorry we missed you. I understand you couldn't be there, but um, I'll be there for Christmas." And he really did a special thing for them, and it was pretty neat. I was on the governor's council for developmental disabilities for 5 years. Um, my term is up, so I'm no longer on that. So we did a lot of stuff with policy on that. We have every year we go to the Capitol, and I say we, it's usually me and some of my mentoring friends, but we go to the Capitol every year. I've started taking Connor with me to the Capitol, and they always have an autism day at the Capitol. I know it's early April, usually around the 2nd, which is autism day. I think this year it's the 6th. I'll have to double check that, but um, and you basically just go around and talk to your representatives, and let them understand what issues you have. For instance, I think it was 2016 that we went, and there was a group of parents that decided to help try to get the insurance reform bill passed, which would help with insurance. A lot of insurance companies wouldn't cover autism, and certain things for autism, and so there was a group that worked with Autism Speaks, and we basically we didn't think we'd get it past the first year, but we went and advocated, and sure enough, the first year that thing passed, and which was crazy because it doesn't normally happen that way. It usually takes a couple of years to get it on the radar. But when you have a group of parents that are passionate about it, and know how to go in and advocate, that's where the partners in policy making, they help you better understand how to talk to your legislators. But that's one of the things, basically as a parent now, not as Pervasive Parenting Center, I can't do that, but as a parent, I can go lobby for anything that I think will help my son. And so I'm on committees. They usually look to me as a dad, number one, because there are not a lot of dads involved in advocacy, and number two, as somebody from a rural area. And so I get phone calls a lot. Can you be on this committee? So Oklahoma Autism Network, I'm on one of their committees for a statewide plan. Oklahoma Autism Center Foundation, I'm on one of theirs. But basically, I just want to make sure that people know that we in rural areas are here, and that we have the same needs, or maybe even more so, because I can get a lot of different things if I go to Oklahoma City or Tulsa, but Oklahoma City is 3 hours from me. Tulsa's 2 hours from me. Um, and the closest bigger town is Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is 30 minutes from me, but that's across the state line. And so to get some of those, your insurance or Sooner Care or something, it's pretty tough. So, but yeah, I do anything that they'll ask me, because I'm trying to help out in any way I can. So.